Hey everyone, it's Phil Hall of West Fair Communications. Thank you for joining us in today's episode. And what an episode, what a guest. I don't belong on the same Zoom screen as this lady. She's Tanya Acker. You'll know her from the TV show Hot Bench, which is nominated for an Emmy, and she's nominated for an Emmy. She also has a new book out called Make Your Case, about dealing with the legal system and what to expect when going to court. So, Tanya, thank you so much for taking the time to be on today's episode. Really appreciate this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And the book is out in October. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited for people to, I'm excited for the folks to read it and to see what, hopefully kind of just shed some light on what the court experience is. I think that a lot of people take it for granted.
I think a lot of people might even take it as a spectator sport or some source of amusement. At my publication, the Westchester and Fairfield County Business Journal, some of our most popular stories online regard court cases, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's environmental contamination or some lady suing an ice cream company because she feels that the picture of the ice cream was misrepresented on the label. There's just something about court cases that really fascinate people.
Well, it's a couple of things. One, court is really the melting pot for all of our fights. It's the place where everybody can go. Now, I say that with some qualification because everyone doesn't have access. Everybody can't afford a lawyer. There aren't enough lawyers to represent everybody who really needs help. But with that very big caveat aside, it really is our melting pot. It's where billionaires go to fight. It's where neighbors go to fight. And so I think that because we rely on it so much, people sometimes have a misimpression about how efficiently it works, how effectively it works. I think people can sometimes believe that a case that is simple to them will play out in a simple way in the legal system, and that's just not the case. I mean, what is a quote-unquote simple case could end up taking years. So there's that. I think that also there's an issue of people not really having some people don't have the natural resources or equipment to fight back against someone who they think is bullying them. A lot of people don't have allies. A lot of people don't have anybody who will stand up for them if something is going wrong. And they think that court is the best place for them to get their vindication. Now, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is the best and only option. But I think that too often, people don't know enough about what's involved in the process, and so they can come to the decision about going to court without really having full information.
Now, you mentioned that some people don't have the resources to have a lawyer. Would you advise people to go into civil court cases being their own lawyer?
I'm not giving anybody any legal advice about anything. I mean, that really just turns on their abilities, their case. I'm not giving anybody any advice about that. What people should know is that if you represent yourself, there are still rules. There are still things that you've got to jump through. There are still hoops that you got to jump through. Now, it certainly may be the case that a judge will be a little more indulgent or tolerant of a pro se litigant. But no, I'm absolutely not giving anybody any advice on that. What I want people to do is to know that the process is just not as straightforward as they think it is. It's not even as straightforward, frankly, as it is on my show. So on Hot Bench, we hear real small claims cases with the actual litigants. Those cases are derived from small claims courts around the country. But when in the course of getting those cases, we're taking people out of really long lines so they can get what may end up being a much quicker and more efficient adjudication on our show. Courts are crowded, they are clogged. That was the case even before COVID. And so now with the disruption and shutdown of so many court operations, we're going to see what was already a really difficult problem become even more so.
I imagine for a lot of people that are going to court, it's a very stressful experience for them. But as a judge, do you pick up on their stressful vods when people are starting to get a little bit, for lack of a better word, hysterical, trying to get their case across?
Judge on the show. I'm a lawyer in life, so you certainly don't need to. I don't deserve the honorific, but and it's actually my qualification actually helps me answer your question because two things. One, as a lawyer, and when I've represented people who are in really emotionally draining and taxing situations, it is tough. It is tough because I think that lawyers have to remember that those are people, like the people who they are dealing with are human beings. They're not just litigants on a case law page. They're not just the subject of your brief and your court filing. They are humans, and they are in the middle of something that can be as exhausting and emotionally trying as anything, depending on the subject of the case, frankly. And so I think really it's the lawyer's function to provide a zealous advocacy and to defend that person and ensure or represent that person if you're prosecuting a claim, and making sure that all of that frustration and anger or sadness or whatever it is that they may be dealing with, it's the lawyer's job to really filter that through the prism of the case and make it legally relevant. Now, when I'm adjudicating cases on hot bench, when I'm Judge Tanya on the show, it's a similar analysis, but again, there the primary concern is respect for the forum, because yes, it's a TV show. Yes, we want people to have fun, but it is still court. I mean, it is still a forum where people are bringing their claims to be adjudicated. And so, I think when we have the kind of very angry or impassioned antics there, sometimes, at least from my perspective, we all handle cases differently. I think it's important for people to know that you got to take it down a notch. Court is not where we're supposed to fight the way we do on social media. Court is not where, right? Like, court's not where you're supposed to be able to just throw a bunch of stuff at somebody and let it stick until they spend millions of dollars like fighting it. Court is where there are supposed to be rules. And I think that it's important for everybody to respect the process. I mean, part of what I want people to get out of this book is that it's a process, there are rules, and one of the things you may have to experience or deal with in the course of going through it is that some people just don't respect them. People will ignore a court order, people may file things that are just completely baseless, entirely made up. That's not most cases, but it does happen. And there's a certain degree of inconvenience and bother that you're just going to have to deal with, very likely, even if you're 100% in the right, even if justice and all of it is on your side, the process can still be incredibly taxing, expensive, and long. And I think that it's important that people realize that as they're evaluating the value that court may or may not bring to their dispute.
Let's backpedal a bit and speak a bit about your career. What was it about law that excited you as a profession?
That's a great question. It was a few things. One, I think that I wanted to study something. I wanted a career that would allow me to do different things. And a law degree is great for that. You can practice law, you cannot practice law. You can teach. I have a lot of law school colleagues, a lot of law school friends who are incredible professors and academics. You can go into government. Again, friends on both sides of the aisle have served presidents or in Congress. You can be a judge. You can be a great business leader. You can be a great community advocate. You can be a great community organizer. The great thing about law is that it really teaches you the language of the system, so you can figure out how to fix what's broken, change it, keep what works, and I think it equips you with the ability to kind of dissect things in a really useful way. Part of my personal story is that I'll tell you, when I was young and deciding what I wanted to do, I didn't grow up saying I wanted to be a lawyer. I had all kinds of ideas. I wanted to be an art historian. At one point, I told my parents I just wanted to be a journalist, which again, another great a law degree as great help for that. I've got a lot of journalist friends with legal backgrounds, but just to keep it 100% real, I had all of these different ideas about what I wanted to do. And my parents' response was, look, we lost the trust fund that we never had for you. So you should figure out how to always be able to make a living. And again, just keeping it real, I think that it's important for young people, young women of color, all people of all disciplines need to know how to manage their lives in a way. You got to have something you can fall back on. And I appreciate law in that sense because, you know, it's always that. I think that if you come from a background where, look, like I said, there never was a trust fund, and my parents joke about losing the one that they never had. Very amazing, hardworking people who emphasized education. And what they emphasized to me was that you've got to educate yourself in a way so that you'll always be able to take care of yourself. And I'm so grateful for that lesson. I couldn't be more grateful for that advice.
Well, you're a graduate of Yale Law School. What was it like going to Yale?
I loved it. I really loved law school. I loved the experience there. It's a very, diverse group of people. But, because I think it was small, we were able to discuss things with one another. One of my classmates, we were in small group together, was President Trump's 200th appointee to the federal bench. This guy and I don't think we have anything in common politically. We'll probably never vote for the same people. But during law school, we really had the opportunity to respectfully test each other's positions, engage with one another, kind of, discuss things. Doesn't mean you're always going to agree. But I think one of the things I enjoyed about my law school experience was that it was really a platform for people, to learn how to make your case to the other side, not to just make a play on my book, but I like it. It really was a place where you learn to kind of figure out your ideas and know how you're going to defend them, because the world is such that there are always going to be people who disagree with you. There are things that it's important to fight for. And my view is that if you're going to fight for those things, if you want to be an effective advocate for either a client or a public position, you've got to know how to engage with the other side. You've got to know, and that doesn't mean like always, making friends and, there are some points over which we shouldn't compromise. There are some points over which we should. And what I loved about law school was that it kind of gave me the tools or a framework for me to kind of better analyze where I draw those lines. So I loved my law school experience. I loved going to law school. I loved Yale in particular. I found it very, my experience there was that it was familial and collegial. And some of my best friends are people who I was in law school with. So I'm just so grateful for that experience.
How have your colleagues in law reacted to you being on television, on a popular show, and even being an Emmy-nominated part of that show?
Well, they've been really supportive. I am really blessed. I mean, I have a great group of friends. I have a great group of people. I sit on the boards of some nonprofits with lots of lawyers and judges, and everybody is wonderfully supportive. I've had former colleagues come to my show and kind of get a kick out of how we do the cases. My first job out of law school was for a federal judge, Judge Dorothy Wright Nelson. She sits on the Ninth Circuit. She was appointed by President Carter, just a tremendous federal judge. And she came to a taping of the show, which I really kind of got a kick out of. My community has just been so incredibly supportive, just a great group of people, great people who read my book, read early drafts of the book and gave me feedback based on some of their court experiences. It's just been wonderful. It's been a really, really wonderful ride. I feel very, very fortunate.
Well, your Bookmaker case, as you said, is coming out in October. So if you can please give us a bit of a preview, especially for the benefit of business professionals who are watching this episode. If you're a business owner or a business manager, what can they get out of reading your book?
So I'm not giving legal advice, but I'm giving you this. I'm giving you a sense of how torturous and twisted the process can sometimes be. And I don't mean twisted in a bad way. I just mean it's got a lot of twists and turns. You know, that's what due process is. There's a lot that it can require of you. And what I would say to your audience, you know, especially to the business community, is that if you look at where we are right now, I mean, with the shutdowns, with the business shutdowns, we are really going to see, and we already are seeing, litigation, commercial litigation that's going to explode over this issue. I mean, just think about it. Think about people who already bought things from vendors who now can't pay for them because there's no one who's able to buy the supplies that they still, you know, have to pay their purchaser for. You know, things like that. Force majeure, we're going to be interpreting contracts, and what do contractual provisions that allow you to get out of a deal under certain circumstances, how do they apply here? Just because everybody's in crisis doesn't mean that, you know, business person A is going to say to business person B, I got you, man. You know, I know, let's just all hold hands until we get through this. Now, to be fair, a lot of people are doing that. I mean, we're seeing incredible examples of community and people kind of just trying to work it out together, but everybody can't do that. Everybody's not positioned to do that, and everybody just isn't going to do that. And so as we're approaching this, not approaching, I mean, we're in this era of real uncertainty, certainly around this pandemic and how we're going to stem it. And we're approaching kind of a moment where it's really becoming a critical time because it's going on a long time. I don't think that the stimulus, you know, as welcome as it is, I don't think that's going to save a lot of every business. You know, those stimulus checks aren't going to completely tamp the loss, you know, or compensate people for the losses now. And so we're going to see litigation over how people can manage, have managed during this crisis. What are their obligations? What obligations should they be excused from, you know, given these uncertainties that have arisen? So it's really, you know, we're in an era now where we really have to think about our relationships to one another, what we still expect, and what people expect of us. And we may have to evaluate some of those things in a different way.
Are there any other avenues for people to go besides going to court where there could be some sort of settlement that doesn't require standing in front of a judge?
Of course there are. Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked. I write about that in my book too. I'm a big proponent of alternative dispute resolution. I think that where you know, I mentioned my first job out of law school, which was for Judge Dorothy Wright Nelson. She started an organization called the Western Justice Center, on whose board I sit. And the purpose is really to teach people, train kids, help provide platforms and support people who are providing platforms for resolving disputes out of court. You know, even if you file a case, a judge may order you to try to mediate it, but you can try to do that before. I mean, a lot of contracts will actually provide for some mechanism of alternative dispute resolution before they sue. And what people don't realize is that you can get a better result. So again, you know, let's think about your audience for a moment. If you've got two companies who are having some dispute over what a contract means or what their obligations are, the remedies that the court can provide them are pretty limited. You know, it might turn on the terms of the contract. It'll depend on the applicable legal provisions. I mean, it's just limited. It's limited. If two people sit down and say, we are going to work out a deal between the two of us to resolve this lawsuit, they've got so much more freedom. They can give themselves more relief than they might be able to get in court. They can craft a solution that might not be possible for them to get in court. It's sometimes hard to conceptualize that when you're in a big fight with somebody because you hate them. You know, you're really mad. Yeah. But what I want people to get from my book is that the process can have so many twists and turns that you may want to just kind of put that hatred or disgust with that other person in a box for just a minute if you can. You know, settling a case doesn't mean you've made up. It doesn't mean that you don't think they're horrible. It doesn't mean that you think you're wrong. It just means that you want another way out. And you've got a mechanism for coming up with a way out that can save you time, save you money, and give you more than you might get if you had a full lawsuit. So I strongly recommend it, where people can settle a case on fair terms. And again, nobody's ever, fair doesn't mean that everybody loves the deal or they walk out of the room hugging. You can settle a case without ever even seeing your opponent, right? You can go to a mediation and the mediator can just go back and forth. I've participated in that process many times. The mediator can just go back and forth. You don't even have to look at each other. You don't have to see each other, but you can work out a deal that can be far more efficient and better for you than you might get if you took a case all the way to trial. And it's uncertain, because again, just because you think something, you may know you are so right, a judge or a jury may not agree with you.
Mhm. I have to, I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but I have to admit I do love Hot Bench. And I want to know, what is the status of the show now? Because with COVID-19, I don't know if you have to be sitting 6 feet apart from the other members on the panel, or how the jurors or anybody else on the set are going to be positioned.
We are coming back. The producers and CTD, CBS TV distribution are working really hard right now, like even as I speak, on a back to work plan that can get the show back up, that will keep everybody on the production safe. TV production, there are a lot of moving parts, as I'm sure you can appreciate. It's the three of us. It's the incredible team of producers who are finding cases. It is the incredible crew who are there making sure that on the 10th case that we've done that day, that we don't look like we've been up there for 9 hours already. It's a great team of makeup and hair folks who do exactly the same thing, who keep us from looking too tired. So it's a big deal. It's a big production. I have every confidence that we are going to be back. The plan is to get us back as soon as is safely possible. I know they're working on it, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to getting back up on the bench in a safe way.
Excellent. Well, Tanya Acker, your book is Make Your Case. You said it's going to be out in October. We'll be looking for that. We'll be looking for Hot Bench in the fall. And thank you so much for joining us in today's episode. It's really been an honor to meet you, Your Honor.
The honor's all mine. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you, folks, for watching. We'll see you again next week here on YouTube. Have yourselves a good one.